You hear all these commercials about how the grocery store is so you can't even go there anymore because there's so many chemicals around, but you can. You just got to have some little tidbits that we're going to give you today. So, I think listen up. First thing on one on our to-do list is to make a list.
So, some of the things that can contribute to fecal incontinence, number one, is what holds the stool inside the body is this thing called the anal or rectal sphincter.
Hmm.
And if that gets weak or gets traumatized or injured for any reason, there can be some leakage or some seepage
Yeah.
of stool.
That jurisdiction of the sheriff is really the most powerful guard and protector of the rights of the people than any other institution our founders created here.
Today, we're going to talk about how to create a healthy shopping list when you go to the market and perhaps even stay on a budget.
And it's important because when people go to the grocery store, they get all freaked out. We were talking to, our director, producer Stevie just a moment ago, and you hear all these commercials about how the grocery store is so you can't even go there anymore because there's so many chemicals around. But you can. You just got to have some little tidbits that we're going to give you today. So I think listen up. First thing on one on our to-do list is to make a list. Right? You got to go in there with a plan. Have a plan. And the plan has to really keep you on the perimeter as best as possible. So plan to stay on the perimeter with your list. First
Well,
thing.
and why would we stay on the perimeter? Oftentimes, the things that bring the most health or have the most nutrients are on the perimeter. You always find the fruits, you always find the vegetables, you always find the meats around the perimeter. Even the eggs are around the perimeter. The minute you start walking in between the aisles, now you're starting to get into the things that are boxed, the things that are packaged, the things that are processed, and the things that if you turn the label over, you can't even understand the ingredients that you're putting in your cart.
So line your list with things from the perimeter. Things that are refrigerated, that are in the produce section are probably going to be things that are more healthy. And that's true. It really is. Now, don't get all hung up, if you will, in inorganic. Here's a general rule of thumb. The thicker the skin of what you're buying, the less need to buy organic. Not saying organics is good if you can do it, but the thicker the skin, like an avocado, it's less important organic over, say, an apple, because the thinner the skin sort of is a lack of a barrier, right? So stay on the perimeter and make a list. Now, keeping in mind that the higher nutrient value or the more nutrients we bring in, the density, is going to make you full faster as opposed to high calorie, low nutrient foods that are on the inner part of that grocery store. So if we can think about this, we would actually eat less per capita, higher nutrients, better satiety or feeling, and less hunger as opposed to the center. So don't set yourself up to think that it's going to be more expensive to eat like that, because it's really not.
It's not. And it takes more energy to burn green vegetables than there are calories in them. So if you take the time to chew the broccoli, you're going to get full quicker. Plus, it takes more energy to break that broccoli down and burn that broccoli than something that is processed like a Dorito or a chip.
Yeah, and one thing about going to a grocery store to shop, when you do this, when you make your list, stay with your list. Think about it. Stay with your list. Don't get distracted. If you go in there and you're going to say, I'm going to buy some avocados. I want to buy 3 avocados, 2 apples, 3 bananas, a pound of organic grass-fed meat, a dozen eggs. That's what I'm going to buy. I'm going to buy that. Then I'm going to buy myself a sack full of some spinach. That's on your list. Go in there, buy that thing, don't get distracted, and leave.
You've always done that. I have a tendency to get distracted with shiny things. So I'm taking good lessons from you.
Well, the shiny things are on the end caps that say, here's your ho-hos and ding-dongs, buy 2, get 3 free. And I think it should say, buy 2 and get larger free. I don't know. It's a sad thing. Stay away from the end caps, man. Those are the danger zones.
You said something that's really important. Have a plan. Those that don't plan are planning to fail.
That's right.
So if you do not want to fail, have a plan. Create the list, go in with the list, and stick to the list.
Yeah.
And you'll not only have a healthier lifestyle because you've planned, but if you plan that list, you'll stay on your budget.
Well, totally. I remember years ago, and this is true before we even met, I did go to the grocery store with a list. I really did. It was a flip pad that I would make, and I had a little pin attached to it, and I would go there and I'd have my grocery basket and I'd push it down there and I'd put that in there and I'd check it off the list. And I kept that list. And when the list was checked off, I'm going straight to the checkout stand. I didn't waver. I stayed with my plan. But it was really about budget. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Some people, if you have X dollars to spend, don't spend Y dollars. In other words, if you have $100 to spend, don't spend $125. Make your best choices with the $100. And if you'll do our techniques like we talked about, you will find the value will increase. It's not about calories. It's about nutrient density. Nutrient density is on the perimeter. The anti-nutrients, the non-nutritious foods, the high caloric foods are on the inside. Don't fall for the trap that says we need more calories to survive. That has nothing to do with it. And I think this is another thing people should know, plan on going to the grocery store more often because that's important. And another thing you could do is if you have like a deep freeze, you could actually connect with a local farmer perhaps and maybe get a quarter of beef or something like that, or a quarter lamb or something that you might want to put in your freezer there.
Also now, like some of the grocery stores have quick pickup.
Yeah.
So you can order online and pick it up. That will prevent you from getting away from the perimeter because you get it ordered and you pick it up.
I forgot about that. That's great. So order the groceries, make your list, order them, and they'll bring them out to you. Now, the only detriment to that is they're picking out your avocados and you're not. So you might get the ones that are not any good or not really ripe yet.
Yeah.
But honestly, learn to navigate that and kind of make your shopping trip at your grocery store kind of fun.
Yeah, so you're telling me now that when I send you to the grocery store for eggs and some bison and you come home with just the eggs and bison, I shouldn't say, that's it?
No, you should say, well done, good and faithful servant. The bottom line is, honestly, here's the thing, right? Have a plan, stick to it, make the plan well thought out, and your plan will bring fruition of good health to your life. And that's what we got to try to do. So, folks, planning like this, sometimes you got to have a team around you to help you form plans. The Bible says to seek wise counsel in forming a plan. So maybe we can be your wise counsel. So reach out to us at sherwood.tv or give us a call at our clinic and we can help you wherever you are in the world. So we look forward to being a blessing and a servant to you in making a good plan for your shopping trip to the grocery store.
Fecal incontinence can be embarrassing to talk about.
We're going to talk about that and break that down next and give you some key tips on how to remedy that.
And when you navigate through these economies with people, here's what happens. We want to hold their hand through it, let them know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge. Because a lot of times when you're struck with fear does two things. Number one, it can paralyze and people just put their head in the sand and say, I'm just going to forget about it and hopefully it gets better. Or it causes you to make a wrong decision. And this is why we are here, is to help people navigate through the political quagmire nonsense that's going on, the economic malaise and the absolute collapse that we're seeing. And when our freedoms are eroding, our political freedoms, our economic freedoms, our personal freedoms, our religious freedoms, our health freedoms, they're all tied together. But you know what doesn't need to erode with that? Our finances.
KirkElliottPhD.com/Sherwood.
Exploring biohacking, bioharmonizing, biosynergizing, stacking, resilience, or anti-fragility.
Start here. No gimmicks, just proven results.
Hey there, Kevin Sorbo here. Now, deep down, we know this. We're more than just a brain and a body. We're a spirit, we're a soul, and we're also a physical temple. If you hit the wall when you're trying to improve one aspect of your being, it's probably because, well, other aspects are sabotaging our success. So that's why diets don't work. And frankly, why so much conventional wisdom from our so-called medical establishments falls flat. Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood have a very different approach. I should know because I happen to be one of their patients. They address the whole person to get to know you, your challenges, and more importantly, what your goals are. Then they offer a complete plan that addresses your unique biology and your heart. They'll help you discover what you need to experience transformation. So find out more at sherwood.tv/sorbo. That's sherwood.tv/sorbo, or see the link before. Now I'm heading for a workout. You should be going for a workout too. All right, guys. God bless.
Let's shine the spotlight on one of our star supplements.
The human body can make most of the types of fats it needs from other fats or raw materials, but not omega-3 fatty acids, also called omega-3 fats or N3 fats.
These are essential fats that the body must get from food.
Biomega 1000 provides a potent dose of omega-3 essential fatty acids sourced from a strategically placed fishing facility in the far South Pacific Ocean off the coast of Chile.
Each capsule delivers an impressive 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA, and the capsules also contain vitamin E. See the link below for a special offer, and remember, don't be fooled by cheap online knockoffs. A common clinical condition is fecal incontinence, and it's not often talked about. We're going to talk today about what it is, what can make it happen, and some things you can do about it.
Well, I think the first thing to understand with this is it's pretty common. And don't be embarrassed about something that happens of that nature. That's pretty common. I think the best thing you can do is, if you have that problem, is go searching for answers and seek clinicians' help to solve the problem, because it can be embarrassing and inconvenient, humiliating, the whole thing that goes down that pathway. So, we don't need to push, shame into this at all. We need to talk about it straight on. And, I thought that was very appropriate kind of a lead in there. But it's really when we cannot control our bowels. And you're out there and the urgency is right then. You got to go and you don't make it. And you end up not making it to the bathroom in time. And again, that creates a whole load of problems depending on where you are and who you're around and all of that.
So some of the things that can contribute to fecal incontinence, number one, is what holds the stool inside the body is this thing called the anal or rectal sphincter. Mm-hmm. And if that gets weak or gets traumatized or injured for any reason, there can be some leakage or some seepage of stool. A chronic infection. Let's say you travel to Europe and you come home and you've got this thing called fecal incontinence. You may have picked up a traveler's diarrhea, which is an infection that needs to be diagnosed and treated. You might have pancreatic insufficiency. So people who don't make enough pancreatic enzymes, they will have high elastase in a stool test. And these are people that need pretty significant amounts of pancreatic enzyme support. They can have fecal incontinence. There are other things that can injure the nervous system of the bowel. Chronic constipation through time can do that. Any other bowel surgeries can injure the nervous system of the bowel. The bowel has its own nervous system. It's called the enteric nervous system. So that can be a cause of it. It could even be the fact that somebody's taking too much of certain supplements. We have found that things like vitamin C, high dose vitamin C, can have a laxation component to it, or a component of fecal incontinence. And magnesium is another
All the
one that
time.
is at a high likelihood of causing that problem. Magnesium, not only does it help bowel motility, it is also a muscle relaxer. So if the muscles of the pelvic floor are weak to begin with, and then we're taking magnesium, we might have two problems. We might need to quit the magnesium, and we might need to do some pelvic floor therapy. So there are multiple things that we can do to help remedy this thing called fecal incontinence.
Yeah, and I think too, maybe other things that I just thought of that would be related to that is some of these polyols like the xylitol, erythritol.
Absolutely.
Those things are common sweeteners. There are a lot of people out here that are highly sensitive to those things, and it can create this. I mean,
Mucousy stool.
you got to go now. I think coffee is one that people don't think about too much. You have too much coffee too fast, and you've got to go right now. You mentioned like the injuries back there. One of the most common ones is like hemorrhoids. It can really inflame that area back there.
Or if they've been removed.
That's right. And so it becomes this problem, and as the stool is moving sort of north to south,
Top to bottom,
it's supposed to like be a process of separating what we keep with what is waste. And it's a whole intricate process in the body, including the enteric nervous system, including our digestive enzymes. So it's a whole lot of things that can contribute to the cause. But the worst thing to do in a situation like that is look for one thing that causes everything. And if you look for one thing that causes everything, it's going to set ourselves up for failure, because you mentioned a whole litany of things that could be a contributor to this process.
I've had multiple patients that end up with fecal incontinence, and they have what's called collagenous colitis.
There you go.
And the collagenous colitis can be caused by many, many things, one of which is alcohol.
Yeah.
So an overconsumption of alcohol can kind of irritate the lining of the colon and create kind of a mucousy type of discharge from the rectum.
Well, and you also got the prolapsing, that can occur there. Believe it or not, as muscles get weak over time, ladies have had multiple babies and things like that. We've seen that before too, where you got this prolapsing effect where it doesn't, that little sphincter doesn't hold anymore. And you got to think about exercises you talked about to remedy that as well.
Another thing that can help to remedy it is hormone balance.
Yep.
Sometimes if hormones get really, really low, the sphincters lose their tone. So low hormones may contribute to lack of sphincter control.
Yeah, and we deal with this a lot. You don't necessarily talk about it all the time, but whether it be urinary incontinence or fecal incontinence, it's not that atypical, is it? It's pretty common.
It's pretty common. In fact, I have sent a lot of patients for physical therapy. There is pelvic floor physical therapy where a trained professional will work the muscles of the perineum around all of the vital organs to improve, their tone. There can be trigger points in those areas that are causing the problem. There might need to be muscles that need to be strengthened, and that particular therapist can guide somebody in the exercises that they need to do. And perhaps females and males may need to do Kegels. For females, there's even something called Kegel weights.
Wow. So there's a whole bunch, more than you probably ever want to know about fecal incontinence. But bottom line is, it's very common. So if that's something that you're dealing with, don't do nothing about it. Don't be totally embarrassed with it. Get some help and let's get it fixed. You want to reach out to us, we can give you some information like this. Like we've dealt with this a lot. You can. Sherwood.tv. There's a whole bunch of information out there for you. You can give us a call at the clinic as well. And we want to see you healthy and whole and not let these things that can create embarrassment be a common thing in your life. What does our Constitution really mean? Find out next with our constitutional attorney expert, Chris Ann Hall.
Let's get real. Most emergency food is just as bad for you as any other choice in the standard American diet. And that's just sad.
We don't just need food, we need highly nutritional food.
We don't just want to survive food shortages, we are meant to thrive in adversity.
Complete your daily nutrition and have shelf-stable Kingdom Fuel as a cornerstone of your food supply.
Don't sacrifice your health or your taste buds.
Stock up on Kingdom Fuel now.
And when you navigate through these economies with people, here's what happens. We want to hold their hand through it, let them know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge. Because a lot of times when you're struck with fear does two things. Number one, it can paralyze, and people just put their head in the sand and say, I'm just going to forget about it and hopefully it gets better. Or it causes you to make a wrong decision. And this is why we are here, is to help people navigate through the political quagmire nonsense that's going on, the economic malaise, and the absolute collapse that we're seeing. And when our freedoms are eroding, our political freedoms, our economic freedoms, our personal freedoms, our religious freedoms, our health freedoms, they're all tied together. But you know what doesn't need to erode with that? Our finances.
KirkElliottPhD.com/Sherwood.
We have a brand new documentary out called Non-Compliant to the Sheriff. Now, our first documentary, Non-Compliant, and our second documentary, Non-Compliant 2, are both available at noncompliantmovie.com. The first documentary is all about the duty and the role of the state to be a check and balance on the federal government, state and local government. So if you haven't seen that yet, let me please recommend that you go to noncompliantmovie.com and watch the first documentary, available to you at no cost. It is going to be life-changing, and we have hundreds of thousands of 5-star reviews and people all over the world sending us messages about how this message is so life-changing. And it's a global message because, really, it's about your inherent rights. It's about why government is designed for one purpose. The purpose is to secure your rights, and how our founders put together our governments in order to retain the power by the people to be a check and balance on government through state and local government. And from that, we were inspired to create Non-Compliant to the Sheriff. Now, I have been for nearly a decade, traveling around the country teaching sheriffs and deputies a 3-hour continuing education course, all about the role and the duty of the sheriff, the history of the sheriff's role and duty to secure our rights, not to violate them. We have a whole section on the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, what our sheriffs and their deputies need to know not to be sued. And then we have a section on the jurisdiction of the sheriff, which is so incredibly important. That jurisdiction of the sheriff is really the most powerful guard and protector of the rights of the people than any other institution our founders created here in these United States of America through our constitutional republic. And it's from that course that I had sheriffs telling me, this is inspirational. What you've taught us in these 3 hours is just simply life-changing. As a matter of fact, I've taught this at big conferences where I taught the sheriffs of 17 states all at one time. And I had sheriffs coming up to me immediately before I even got off the stage saying, I've been on the phone changing policies already based on what we learned from you. And we thought to ourselves, you know what? We need the people to know this information. We need the people to know this, number one, so that they can make sure the candidates they have for sheriff know the proper role and duty of the sheriff, so we can be sure to have constitutionally minded sheriffs. Number two, because if you have a constitutional sheriff, if the body of the people are not in support of that sheriff cannot be who they want to be and who they're required to be. And number 3, it empowers sheriffs who already have that inclination. In a world that is full of propaganda like defund the police and all of our law enforcement is evil. You see it all over the news. You see wicked politicians propagating this stuff. We knew we had to create non-compliant to the sheriff to show people what's really happening at the level of the sheriff that the media will not show you. There are sheriffs all over America who are standing up in defiance of unconstitutional laws and orders and edicts, in defense of the property rights of the people, and they've been doing this for years. But the politicians and the media do not want you to know this. They do not want you to know what sheriffs are doing successfully, regularly, to stand for people's rights, because this is how government's supposed to really, really work. Now, what we do with non-compliant 2 is we take 2 real life situations, 2 events that actually happened. A pastor who refused to shut down his church over COVID, and a sheriff who arrested him for it. And a pastor who refused to shut down for COVID, and a sheriff who said, I'll go to jail to keep you open. And how this 2 incidents actually impacted and changed their states, and even all of these United States, all boiled down to what a sheriff would or would not do. This film is brand new, available at noncompliantmovie.com only right now. Pretty soon we're going to make it available on DVD, so maybe by the time you see this, it will be available on DVD at noncompliantmovie.com. But we're already getting messages about how this is life-changing. And to be honest, if you share this with your sheriff might be one who has watched this movie and come back to us and asked us to come and train their deputies. noncompliantmovie.com. It will be life-changing.
Exploring biohacking, bioharmonizing, biosynergizing, stacking, resilience, or anti-fragility?
Start here. No gimmicks, just proven results.